Welcome back to Usapang Bayan. Kasama pa rin po natin si AmCham Senior Advisor, Mr. John Forbes. Sir, since we're talking about U.S. President Donald Trump earlier, what can you say about the future of our businesses here in the Philippines with President Duterte leading the Philippines and U.S. President Trump leading America?
Well, both of them are concerned about their respective economies, and the Philippine economy is growing very strongly. As you know, almost reached 7% last year. It has been averaging a record high in the last decade. I think it's going to continue that way, and when the economy grows as strongly as this is growing, it has potential to grow even stronger, even as high as into the double digits. So people pay attention to growing economies, particularly when the population is also 105 million and the middle class is getting larger. Just look at the number of cars that are being sold every year and the rate of increase in the number of cars. So that rate of increase is occurring not just with cars, it's occurring with white goods, it's occurring with Facebook subscribers, more companies that can use Google services, more companies that are going to be, more farmers that are going to be growing pigs and chickens and needing feed, and that will continue, and that attracts American companies to be active here. Of course, American companies, having been here, as we discussed earlier, for a century, expand steadily with economic growth in the country. And so since economic growth is approaching sustainable and continuing record levels, you can expect them to be expanding more. Now, if they are discouraged from operating here, if contracts are not observed or policies are not consistent and the like, then that may affect the rate of expansion, or individual companies might not come in who are not here, or might not expand. Over the years, I've seen very, very few companies actually leave. We had a car manufacturer who left because they couldn't find enough parts here, so they went over to Thailand, where there are 4,000 companies all producing 3 million cars, where they can find every part they need right there. And we had one company leave because of a labor issue, another semiconductor company because the plant was old, and during the 2007 recession they decided to close one in Malaysia and one here.
John, how closely is the relationship between American military interests with the commercial aspects, like American businesses? Does that mean that if American military, the relationship between the American military and the Philippine government lessens, then the American presence in the commercial sector will also lessen, or it does not?
No, I mean, actually, if you wanted a test case, we have the final withdrawal of the U.S. military in November of 1992. You remember when the Senate voted 12-12, and the base agreement expired, and Pinatubo erupted, and the negotiations that were going on at that time, if you recall, between Undersecretary Armitage and Raul Manglapes, which were moving forward successfully, were sort of blown up by the departure of the Air Force with Pinatubo, et cetera. So at that point, Clark was covered with ash, Subic was covered with ash. Subic was cleaned up because the Navy thought they might stay. But eventually the Navy left, and you had these large bases which gradually have reached the point where they are today with 100,000 jobs. So, and at the time the departure of the U.S. military occurred, the BPO industry hardly existed. Now the BPO industry, which is 70% American, has 1.2 million employees. Another factor is to look at that comes to the United States are the remittances. About 1/3 of total remittances received in the Philippines come from the Philippine American community in the United States, which numbers 4 million. So that's not been affected either. So I don't see a connection between the presence of American military forces, although the popular support for them was to stay, and the economy. It's more what I was discussing earlier about strong economic growth. However, I do think the defense treaty is something that American businesses are interested in seeing it continue, and I would put it in terms of the old balance of power within the region, right? That you keep things stable and status quo. One is sometimes worried about what goes on in North Korea, but one is also worried about the possibility for incidents in the South China Sea. So you worry about that in the sense of that being calmly talked about, and that there not be provocations in that area.
In connection with the businesses here, American businesses operating here in the Philippines, President Trump had made specific mention that his policy will be to be America first, and his other policy is to bring jobs back home to the United States. How does that affect a lot of the jobs, particularly, let's say, in the BPO sector and other industries that have started to have operations here in the Philippines that have moved out, let's say, from the United States? Do you see a reversal of that?
It's a very good question, George. I don't see a reversal of that. I mean, globalization has proceeded to a point where you have these changes. It's not that, you know, if somebody is working on say a manufacturing, for example, I can't remember the technical term of the semiconductor that is made by the largest exporter in this country, which is the American company headquartered in Texas, Texas Instruments, that goes up to China, and then it goes into, let's say, Apple products or Samsung products. It's in most of the cell phones that are made in the world. And then they go all over the world. And that cell phone has parts from other countries as well. If that's taken apart, if there's a tariff on the cell phone when it goes into the United States, or if Apple is forced to move its supply chain assemblies, manufacturing back into the United States, the price of that product will go up. That's not what American consumers would like to see. We can go all the way back to our basic economics when the specialization that certain countries could do would bring down the price, and that was the reason for global trade. The world has been through, should learn from what happened after the First World War, when prior to that there was a period of globalization, and then the United States had a very high tariff on imports, and that also contributed to our great recession in the United States. So we don't know yet exactly what will happen in terms of what the administration, what the Congress, because remember, the administration may propose and the Congress disposes, and while the Republican Party may have a very slight majority, in fact, yesterday on the confirmation of the Education Secretary, the vote was 50-50 in the Senate. There's never been that close a vote on a executive cabinet secretary in the Senate. Usually it's a fairly large margin. The Vice President had to cast a deciding vote in favor of the Education Secretary. So it's a small margin for the Republicans in the Senate and a somewhat larger margin in the House, but the Republican Party traditionally is in favor of free trade. So I'm not sure the President could count on everybody in his own party with some of the things he's saying vis-a-vis Mexico, or if he withdraws from NAFTA. The economies are so linked between Canada and Mexico and the United States. So the rhetoric to get elected in the campaign should be different from the policies that you carry out if the rhetoric is extreme and impractical. So we're still, I want to emphasize, in the very early days of the Trump administration. The very few of the cabinet secretaries have been confirmed. When even the cabinet secretaries come in, as the Secretary of State came in on Sunday and was sworn in, they have to find undersecretaries and a deputy secretary and assistant secretaries and staff up their departments. Same thing with the NSC. I think some of the things that were coming out very early from the president were not gone through the bureaucracy. They didn't go to the NSC. The ban on people coming in from seven countries was not even cleared with the new Secretary of Homeland Security. So as this settles down, I think the process may be, I hope the process will be less shocking to us. So for the moment, I think BPOs, well, uncertainty creates a hesitation to invest or expand. So I think the effect, both of some of the things that were said by President Duterte until there were reassurances from the trade and finance secretaries, and certainly the unknown about President Trump creates some uncertainty, and that has an effect. It's very hard to measure on expansion and new investment. So that's going on. A little bit of hesitation, a little bit of uncertainty until the picture becomes completely clear.
Well, sir, in a previous interview, you said key reforms will attract possibly 10 billion pesos in foreign direct investments. What are these key reforms that you're talking about?
Well, multiply by 50. I really said $10 billion. Yeah. No, what we've been saying, the people that have been responsible for Arrancada, is that with the kind of reforms there to promote the 7 big winner sectors, that the Philippines could easily be getting, I was just talking about foreign investment, $10 billion worth of foreign investment in the country. And investment in the Philippine economy has been going up. There's something called the GCF, the Gross Capital Formation, which is a measure of the level of investment in an economy. It doesn't where it comes from. There's a combination of domestic and foreign investment. And it should really be for a country like this, or at the time when Malaysia or Thailand were growing up to 30% of the GDP. And it's going up almost 1% per year. It was doing so in the Aquino administration. I'm sure it'll continue in this administration. Foreign investment itself is reaching over $6 billion. As of November, the first 10 months of 2016, the figures of the BSP for net FDI in 2016 had reached $6.2 billion, and they reached $6 billion in 2014 and 2015. That's 500% what they were at the beginning of the Aquino administration. So 10 billion a year should not be difficult to reach. Now, when you have constraints as you do, I'll mention 2 sectors where it's harder to invest in. Agribusiness. There are all sorts of restrictions on land or infrastructure challenges. So there's underinvestment there by companies that, you can't do more Dole and Del Montes or large banana plantations. They're challenging to bring all the farmers and the like together. And the other is mining. I mean, just this week we've had actions that there's been a moratorium since July of 2012 that President Aquino put into effect that did not allow new mines to start production. And now to have this move against 26 of the existing 41 mines is very concerning. And what's concerning, I think, there, as we look at it broadly, is that it's announced through a press conference, not by notifying the companies have contracts and they're operating under the law. So those are 2 areas where you could get more investment. Over 10 billion can be done, yes.
I think we can discuss more about that later. We need to pause for a station break. Magbabalik pa rin po ang Usapang Bayan. Kasama pa rin po si AmCham Senior Advisor, Mr. John Forbes. Please stay tuned.